Hello and welcome to the Beer Pad. Today's episode is all about Starfield. It is a game that I did not play, but thankfully my co-host and my excellent friend Paul have played the hell out of this game and they will tell you all about it. Now, I will give Marcus the big screen and ask him, for the people that may not be familiar with Starfield or only know it by name, how would you describe the game?
Fucking huge. Fucking huge. It's enormous.
Ginormous.
It's so big, it's kind of daunting at first, in my opinion. I've been playing for about on and off for 2 weeks. I've not given it as much play as I wanted to and as I planned to do, because life happened and it's still happening. But I've played enough to know that it's something that I'm going to spend 500 hours playing for the next God knows how long. 500 hours, in fact. The first thing I will say is that this is the most polished unreleased Bethesda game in such a long time. I mean, Bethesda Game Studios, especially after the debacle that was Fallout 70 shite. It's wildly ambitious. There are flaws. It's not friendly in places because it tries to do so much. It goes back to that daunting feel,
Right?
And it is a slow burn. It is a slow burn. I mean, especially if you're used to Skyrim and big dragon, burn everybody, dodge dragon, and Fallout 4, nuclear explosion, world is toast.
Right.
If you compared to those, it's positively glacial with regards to its initial pacing, but I think it feels refreshing because of it.
Right. Now Paul, I want to get your thought really quickly. Before we get to that, we usually save comments for the end, but we have a hi and bye here. Hello, Mark. You are going to sleep, so goodbye, Mark. Now, Paul, really quickly, how would you describe the game? Let's do our due diligence. Like Marcus says, this is a Bethesda game.
Right.
Was Todd Howard directing it, or I forget what the?
Yeah, he directed this one.
So a lot of people know him from the Elder Scrolls game, the tremendously successful Skyrim series. Now, how would you describe this game without getting into your opinions just yet?
It is basically if the people who made Fallout 4 did their own version of Mass Effect.
Oh.
It is an action RPG, but it is compared to the earlier games that they did much bigger, much grander. You're not just exploring one world or one part of a world, I should say. You're exploring multiple worlds. So you're not just going to say the Washington D.C. in Fallout 3. You're going to all these different planets, and none of them have as much to do in them as Washington D.C. and Fallout 3 did. But you do have all these different things, and you're constantly running into like new different people who are giving you different missions and all this different stuff. And it's everything. A lot of things have been refined, and a lot of things have been added, and it's much big. As I said, it's a much bigger, a much grander game. I mean, I don't know what the actual comparison in real estate is, but I would imagine it's basically Fallout 4 exponentially bigger than that.
And I will negate your entire explanation by saying that Washington, D.C. is not a planet. So that makes no sense.
No, but I mean, but you know what I mean.
I totally get it.
You couldn't go beyond.
Some of the people there do act like fucking aliens. It has
to be.
That is very true. That is true. It's also though, we should point out that where Skyrim is a fantasy game rooted in, especially particularly a medieval fantasy game like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones.
Right.
And Fallout games are post-apocalyptic but strongly influenced by 50s sci-fi aesthetic. This is a sci-fi space opera story.
Right.
Is much more influenced by things like Firefly, The Expanse, Star Trek, to a lesser extent Star Wars. There's no like magic or any of that kind of stuff. As well as I mentioned, like, you know, the Mass Effect games and games like it.
I would say dirty Star Trek. And not dirty in the rude way. I would say
Yeah.
dirty in the grubby way, because I mean, Star Trek, the
Right.
Federation ships are so sleek and so clean, and you know everything is just so, you know, idealized. You
Well,
know, there's good and there's bad. There's not many shades of gray. But I'm just, you know, I
Right.
know some of that has changed over the last few years with Picard and Discovery and Strange New Worlds. But I mean, you got to think Star Wars has got the, you know, kind of like the warts and all, and you know, the several other games, movies, and shows that do that. But it does feel kind of, you know, like grubby Star Trek.
Right.
At times it does, but there's also like, that's one of the things that's interesting about it is like, you go for one of the big cities that you go to is New Atlantis, and that feels very much like something out of Mass Effect or Star Trek, where everything is like, you know, clean and neat and very stylized and looks like a, you know, the cover of a sci-fi novel from the 70s, you know. And then you go to like a different place and like it's got a very cyberpunk, and then you get in your ship, and your ship has much more of a grounded industrial feel, like out of something out of Alien or Firefly. So it is definitely a mashup of a lot of different science fiction space opera influences.
Yeah, at one point you have to get your ass to Mars, and that's quite interesting to go there, because it is, you know, you can almost taste the dust in the air as you walk through. I mean, there's a lot of mining facilities in this game, especially at the beginning. You see a lot of mining facilities. In fact, you start off in one, and
Yeah.
I gotta say, the game. I mean, I've been playing on PC. Paul, I don't know what you were playing on, but I was
Xbox.
running PC with everything tuned to ultra, and very pretty. I mean, again, no graphical glitches, no lighting issues, because I know that's always been a problem with Fallout, where you see these horrible lighting things where it's like they've got a light source coming out of their skull. So yeah, I mean, the last year that's apparently been spent on polish was well done.
So Marcus, keep going. Give me a couple of minute overview of your experience with the game, both good and bad, but without getting into too much detail, which you will get into later.
Okay, so like I said, it felt a little bit intimidating at first, because when you know you start off, you're doing X, Y, and Z, and then this happens, and you have to pilot your ship somewhat, and it's not very super user friendly initially. It's a little bit, it can be a little bit tricky, especially with, you know, accessing the star maps, and there's a lot of button pressing to go to a screen, you know, move the wheel, changing weapons. You know, the standard to Fallout thing, you know, if you're playing Fallout or any other Bethesda Game Studios game, is you want to hoard everything, you want to pick everything up, and loot is always, you know, your pack weight is kind of chintzy. Apparently, that's what it felt like to me. There's a lot of nuance to it, surprising nuance, to be honest with you, especially after how streamlined both Fallout and Skyrim felt. I mean, Skyrim, you pick it up, you know what to do. You're in. This is your shouts, yeah, this, that, and the other. Boom, boom, boom. Fallout, you got VATS. You know what you're doing. This one is, no pun intended, alien territory in a lot of ways, because, you know, you've got your cities to navigate. You've got your wide open expanses to explore and to scan, and then you got your space combat, and space travel, which is another kettle of space fish.
Right. I mean, that's a tremendous change from Skyrim, just that alone.
It is. It is. And it's something that, you know, and then you're throwing on top of that the shipbuilding, which they've obviously, and the homesteading that they've taken the homesteading from Fallout 76 and from Fallout 4. And that's another whole thing, because you build your homestead, so you need all the parts for the homestead. You have a big enough ship to get the stuff in the hold to find and then find a planet, and then build and make sure you've got enough crew on the homestead, and then you've got enough crew on your ship, and you've got a companion, and you pick which companion you want, much like many of the Fallout games. And all the while you're working for this mysterious constellation group. So yeah, there is so much to unpack about the game.
That's excellent.
It's going to be a while before I've unpacked even half of what I do.
And Paul, give us your several-minute summary of your experience with Starfield.
It's very similar, but at the same time, there were also a lot of things where I felt like I could ignore things and wouldn't be that big of a deal. Like Marcus mentioned that you could go to a planet, build a house, and that there was all these things involved in building the house. I never felt the need to build the house. I just lived on my spaceship, because it was always with you. So I was like, okay, I don't need to build a house. Like maybe if I was going to retire and settle down with my robot wife or something, I would. But for the point of this game, I felt like, okay, I can just live in my spaceship and I'm not missing anything. Like I'm not, one of the things I always find annoying in games is when they're like, one of our systems is you can build a house. You need to go build a house now, or you cannot progress in this game. And they didn't do that in this, thank God. There's a couple of things where they were kind of like, yeah, okay, you can kind of do this stuff now. And so there's a lot of that. And for me, it was also tend to play these kind of games as action games that are really, really deep, as opposed to an adventure game that has combat.
Right. That's how you like to play.
Yeah.
Anyway, like you like your RPGs to be action heavy.
Exactly. It's one of the many reasons why I don't like turn-based combat, because I find it too passive. So for me, I was running around and shooting things and this and that and having a lot of fun with the combat and running into frustrations here and there, as Marcus mentioned, and as I really want to get into. But yeah, for me, like. It's just real. I find it very engaging. I mean, I love this kind of science fiction. I think of all the genres of science fiction, space opera is my favorite. And so I immediately gravitated to this game, to what you were doing, to where you're going. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to go to another planet. Okay, how do I do that? Figure out the star map. Oh, star map. Okay, cool. One of the things that I also appreciate is that there are certain shortcuts built into the game. And I even wrote a whole piece about this, because if you're supposed to go from one planet to another, you can go the realistic route, which means you walk back to your ship, you get in the ship, you go walk across the deck, you get into the cockpit, you sit down, take the ship off, look at the star map, click on the thing, boom, 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 you're at a planet. Or you can do what I do, which is you click a button, you go click another button and go, okay, I want to go there, and boom, you're there. Now right. You can't do that all the time. You can't do that if you're in combat. You can't do that if you're overburdened. And sometimes you can't do that if you're inside a structure. But literally, it can save you like a half an hour.
Right. I think that's an important feature in today's games in general. You need to have fast travel, or a lot of gamers
this
don't
goes
have
beyond fast travel, because if you're on the surface of a planet, you can fast travel back to your ship, but you still would have to do all those other things. And what they basically did is said, no, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to get in and then take off and boom. You can literally just click a button and you will end up in orbit around the planet that you want to go to. Now, we should point out, you always end up in orbit around the planet, and there are space pirates and there are bounty hunters. So you may basically show up and get shot, but like I said, people have talked about this game being like 200 hours, 150 hours. I think I'm probably going to cut that down in half by virtue of the fact that I'm literally going to fast travel everywhere I possibly can.
Like in real life.
in
I've seen
in
you
real life.
travel.
Yes.
So this is a question you wanted to ask for both of you. What other sci-fi RPG games does this remind you of, or would you say this is a better version of X game, or it's kind of trying to be like Y game?
I think definitely that Paul's comparison to Mass Effect is a valid one, but I would say it's way more expansive than Mass Effect because you know that the cities are pretty much the only place you've got these preset places, whereas you do have landing zones in Starfield, but then you can end up exploring almost the entire planet just by walking around. And
Yeah.
then you have to scan things, and you find these new buildings, or you find a cave with dead miners in it. Apparently, they have a lot of issues with miners in Starfield because there's a fucking lot of dead ones. You can't actually swing a cat without hitting a dead miner.
Paul has had issues with miners in the past.
That's
that's why I don't want to mention
oh,
them.
there you go.
You
just jinxed it. You just jinxed his
I also
interwebs.
the other game that it kind of reminds me of is No Man's Sky.
It's No Man's Sky with plot.
Yeah, it's like No Man's Sky with like plot and purpose and combat and actual things to do.
I mean, to be fair, No Man's Sky has improved exponentially out of all recognition since its very, very, shall we say, unfortunate launch several years ago, and it's now a vast thing with so much to do, but it doesn't have the structure perhaps a lot of people like myself crave, because I thought No Man's Sky was going to be the bee's knees, and I got it day one, and I was so disappointed with it. That I still haven't forgiven the team behind it. I kid. I've forgiven them. But yes, it does. I mean, it does seem to have taken some inspiration from that.
Yeah.
Elite is another one that you could say. You could perhaps say aspects of EVE Online with regards to the shipbuilding. I mean, only a few tiny. I mean, there's no multiplayer in it. Thank God. Honestly, at this after Fallout 76, which I thought would have been so good. I mean, the idea of playing multiplayer and just getting twatted over and over by some assholes, but it just doesn't feel like fun. The space combat is something that takes a little getting used to. Even though it's actually relatively straightforward, where you've got your you have three different weapons to use. You have to power them up. You only have X amount of power points to allocate to them, and your shield and gravity if you need it, or your gravity drive rather if you want to make a fast getaway, and your actual engine. I don't think space combat is perhaps the strongest aspect of Starfield. I mean, it's no horse armor. But I think that's the one that when we see updates, I think they'll probably lower the barrier of entry to
Right.
really being able, because again, you're not playing multiplayer. They'll make it a skosh perhaps more accessible to people like myself who can't think in 3 dimensions. I mean, we have enough trouble with 2.
One I would point out is if like you mentioned, you have like a certain number of energy points and you have to allocate them to, do you want them your shields, your engines? What I noticed is if you don't put any in your gravity drive, but you leave them in that stasis bar for when you need them, it will automatically allocate them to your gravity drive. So when you need a fast getaway.
Yeah. Okay.
So
and then look, the visual effects of the gravity drive are great. It can be, like I said, with regards to having to. I know Paul said, you got 2 button clicks and you're at your ship, and your ship's around another planet, and that's great. But then if you're in combat, it's click to do this, guy, go to this screen, go to your star map, select somewhere to jump to, and try and get away from these the bad guys, because some of them are actually really quite tricky, even from the sort of like the initial start. But obviously, you do have, in the best Bethesda tradition, you have traits, you have skills to level up, and skill points. The traits are actually they give with one hand and they take away with another. They do, if there's extrovert, there's introvert, there's alien DNA, which means that you've got a little bit more health and oxygen access. Because oxygen's a big thing, apparently, if you want to breathe. Oxygen is the new food and drink every 20 minutes. But then you get penalized because when you try and heal, the things that heal you don't heal you as quickly as if you didn't have this alien DNA. The professions, you can, it's like, oh, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a bounty hunter? Do you want to be a diplomat? Who the fuck wants to be a diplomat? I mean, that's right up there with owning a bar in Star Wars Galaxies. But I mean, you can be you can be any one of these different things and have these natural and traits that also boost you up, and to get your skills up, and as you earn skill points, you have to complete certain things. So to improve your piloting and your shooting, you have to. Your ship combat, you have to kill, take out X amount of enemies, which is, counterintuitive because sometimes it's tricky to take out X amount of enemies without getting blown up. Or, if you want to improve your charisma and you're being able to talk to people and, convince them to do shit, you've got to win three conversations, which can be interesting. Bethesda loves a good lockpick, right. And this is not a good lockpick. It can be really, really just frustrating. Because again, I have no patience with actually. If I'm going to put points in my security for my lockpick, I don't expect a lockpick. I'm like, boom, I'm done. Fuck that shit.
Let's take a step back and hold off on the criticisms for a second, and let's talk about the aspects of the game that you enjoyed. Paul, kick this section off, please.
Well, for me, the first thing, of course, I'm going to mention is the combat. It is much improved over what you had in the Fallout games. Now, in Fallout, you had this VAT system. You basically pause the action, and then you say, like, okay, I want to shoot a bullet into his foot, and then I want to shoot a bullet into his shoulder, and then I want to shoot that bee behind him, and then I want to come back, shoot this. But you needed that because you tried to play that as a first-person shooter. It didn't really work. It didn't work that well. This has much improved real-time combat. You don't have the slowdown system. You don't really need it. Now, is it as good a first-person shooter as, the best Call of Duty, the best Battlefield, yada, yada? No. But it is really, really good. So that's one thing that I really liked. I liked the space combat myself. Do I think it could be improved? Sure. Everything can be improved. One of the things that I also like that I could see people not liking is when you're like Marcus mentioned, you can be a diplomat and whatnot. This doesn't have the usual classes. It doesn't have you're the ranged fighter, you're the long ranged fighter, you're the tank, you're the healer. It is literally more like, do you want to be a fast food restaurateur? Do you want
the bouncer skill? There's a bouncer profession there that it's sort of like, I'm sorry to interrupt, Paul, but it gives you melee skills, something else, and gourmet skills. Because every bouncer I've ever met in my life, when they're busy telling me I can't get into a bar or club, also has hot tips on how to make fricasseed space vole. I mean, some of it is just kind of silly.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the combat, Marcus? Did you enjoy it? Was it what you were expecting?
Actually, yes. I didn't miss VATS, which is a good thing. I mean, I like VATS. Don't get me wrong. In Fallout, VATS works. In this one, it doesn't need it, especially if you've got a useful companion. The weapons choices, being able to favorite a bunch and then just use the little the D-pad to go up, down, left, right, or whatever, and just go through for your your ranged, your melee, your laser. Because obviously you get a big mining laser as a kind of default that I keep with me everywhere because I just like to have a big fucking laser. your explodables, and it's easy to access those, and the weapons feel hefty. Now, I've not got to the super, mega unlocks that I'm sure will be later in the game, because again, I haven't put enough into the traits to expand that. But I mean, even just putting, a couple of points into ballistics, you do see a big change in how many bad guys you can take out. Because obviously, ammo is another thing that's really important in the game, because some of them can be ammo sponges. So
you mentioned you played on PC and you had everything cranked up. How was it visually?
Gorgeous. I mean, really gorgeous. I mean, I'm seeing people talk about the Xbox versions, and understandably share those, because Microsoft wants to use this to sell Gamers Pass and sell consoles. But to them, I say, oh, bless you. I mean, there's a reason I've got an 800-pound gorilla of a gaming rig right here, and on Ultra. Oh my good grief! And my machine's it's a 3-year-old Alienware, but I bought a top of the range one during the pandemic, because I'm trying to future proof myself for as long as possible. And I will say kudos to Bethesda again, in that it doesn't need a super up to the minute machine to make it run super sexy. Maybe that's the Xbox aspect, where they have to say, let's keep it a little dim, let's keep it respectable, because we don't want the PC to look so much better than our consoles. But I've been seeing stuff. That looks really good, even on Xbox Series S. Apparently, the refinement and that they've done on that level of console is still really, really impressive. This is definitely, it looks like a Bethesda game with regards to the funky heads on people, but this time it's just really, really good. The shading is great. The dark is dark when you're going through the mines and you've got your flashlight on, and you're looking at what's those terror beasts? What are they called?
Which ones?
The terramorphs, or whatever it is, or what are they called? You end up seeing these the genetically engineered ones, and you see these skeletons, these white skeletons of these monsters, and you see them out of the corner of your eye, and you fucking jump. Or you see you find the pirates who are everywhere, as Paul said, and they're relatively smart. They can't see you through a wall. Hurrah! Well done there. Yeah, it's good, and even the companions whisper it quietly, but the companions are relatively smart and useful. There is one caveat I will add to that later when we're complaining, but space combat is not my forte. I mean, I peaked with X-Wing versus TIE Fighter all those years ago, but it's serviceable. I mean, when they come out with a skill via a patch that says auto combat is deployed, and you've hired these gun people to go to your turrets, and they're going to shoot everything for you, and all I have to worry about is just dodging from left to right. I'm too old to multitask.
Now, sticking to the graphics, how did it look on Xbox, Paul, and how did it compare to other Xbox games that you played this year?
I would say it's on par with most of what I've seen. I know people complaining because it's like 30 frames per second, but I didn't really notice anything. I never noticed any kind of slowdowns. I think once I noticed I don't know what they call it, but like when something suddenly pops up in the distance.
They call it pop-up.
Yeah, pop-ups, I guess. Although
they're actually pop-ins.
Yeah. Although I always think it's funny that people complain about that so much, because 99% of the time that's not what you're supposed to be looking at. like I've always heard, like I always laugh when people complain about that in a racing game because I'm like, no, you're supposed to keep your eyes on the road, not on the building in the distance.
No, but that can distract you. Like in real life, it can.
Right.
But question: Are you sensitive to frame rate? Like, does the game being in 30 bother you?
I mean, unless like it feels like the game is slowing down because there's way too much going on, then I notice it. But like in this, I didn't really notice much of anything.
I find it interesting that people are complaining about whether it be pop-ins or a 30 frame, a 30 FPS, and there's a game like the new Zelda, which I've been told slows to a glacial chug at certain points because of how old the tech is, and yet you don't hear a peep out of people on that one because Nintendo and Xbox don't apparently.
I do think it's a much better looking game than anything that they've done before. The animations are better. I mean, like there's more detail to the characters. There's like the characters are like the big thing. Like they like if you compared like somebody from this game to like somebody from Fallout 4, it's like night and day.
It's like comparing somebody from LA to somebody from the Swamplands.
So I know nothing about the game's story. Can you guys tell me, without giving too much away, how is the quality of the writing and the storytelling and the voice acting? I was hoping both of you could do that.
We can do that. I mean, that's why we're here. We are in professionals.
Right.
Marcus, kick this one off, please, Marcus.
There is a story. It's to do with a doohickey, that you touch a doohickey and it makes you tingle. And then you find another bunch of people. It's like the Super Adventure Club from South Park, minus the blatant child abuse.
See, I thought you were going to say, "Here's a story of a lovely lady," but it is not at all how
I know that's the Brady Bunch, but I never saw it. We didn't have that in the UK. And I don't feel that I missed out.
You did not, really.
But the story is, it's developing. I mean, that's the thing. You've got the thing about the game is so easy to get sidetracked. You can do it. It happened with with Fallout. It happened with Elder Scrolls. But this time they are not holding back. Everywhere you turn, it's a side mission, side mission, side mission. And all of a sudden they are.
Whoop!
Oh, we lost Marcus.
See, that always scares me when he freezes because I know he's had heart issues. I'm like, no.
So I don't think he would freeze in that position if he had a heart issue, though.
That is probably true. So while we're waiting for Marcus to come back, why don't you talk about the story?
Okay, so here's the basic gist. It's your first day. You're working in a mine. There's a piece of an alien artifact. You touch it, oh my God, you see visions of something. This prompts you to quit your job to try and find out. Wait, is he back?
No, he's not.
Okay. So anyway, so you find this alien artifact, you see it, you see visions, you decide you're going to go out into the galaxy to figure out what is this artifact, where did it come from, what do these visions mean? And that's kind of it. Now, there is a lot more to it. It gets deeply philosophical. There's all this other stuff that goes on. And like Marcus said, you get sidetracked by literally everybody and anyone. I mean, you walk past a guy and he says, wow, I'd really like a burger. Suddenly you have a side mission, get this guy a burger.
Or a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the urgency that some of the other games they've done had. Like Fallout 3, your dad goes missing, and your dad is Liam Neeson, and at the time we didn't realize he could kick everybody's ass. So you want to go find your dad. In Fallout 4, your baby gets kidnapped, and you want your baby back because you're a good parent.
You want your baby back, baby.
Thank you. But in this, it doesn't have that kind of urgent story, and it also doesn't have the most original story, because this is literally the same beginning as the story in the original Mass Effect trilogy, and it's also a story. You know, like literally in that one, it was the same thing. Like you have a vision, but like, what is it?
But don't you start off as on a mining planet, and you're a miner, and you're digging rocks or something?
Yes, you're not like.
So not literally the same.
It's
as
not
Mass
literally the same, because in Mass Effect you're like a space captain already, and and whatnot. So
you're not Shep.
And it definitely goes different places, but it is a familiar trope.
So the beats are kind of similar, would you say?
I would say it has the same initial seed. Where it goes from there is very different. And Marcus is right. It is a slower story. In fact, I would say that and this is one of its influences, is it's much more 2001 than say Star Wars. Or
right.
You know, it's very much more of an old school hard sci-fi kind of.
Yeah, see, that's why I was a little confused when you said space opera, because that's something I think of Star Wars of being more of a fantasy sci-fi thing. And the little I know about this game, I thought it was a hardcore sci-fi thing, which is more in your guys' wheelhouse.
Yeah, it is decidedly the Star Wars it tends to be what we call space fantasy, and this is definitely more space opera, but it does have the epic scope of Star Wars. I would say if anything in Star Wars, it's more like Mandalorian than say the original, like the prequels.
Okay.
You know, there's not there aren't a lot of there aren't like aliens. There isn't like a whole galaxy of government and bureaucracy and all that stuff. There isn't even like a Starfleet. I mean, there's like little versions of you know, Starfleet. Like it's much more like like I said, Firefly in many respects than
I see.
In fact, that's one of the things it's got different than Mass Effect. Like in Mass Effect, you are the commander of a big ship and you command a crew, and your crew comes along with you on these missions. This one, you're much more of like a lone wolf. Like you're much more like, yeah, you have a companion, but you're still in charge. You're the one calling the shots. And if you don't want that like robot to follow you around, you just tell them to fuck off, and they'll go, okay.
But it's always useful to have a companion.
It is actually,
because those pack mules need to carry shit for you.
Yeah, that's something I definitely we're gonna bitch about whenever we get to that point.
Yeah, so sorry about the dropout.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean it is space opera in a lot of ways. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know, Paul, if you got the side quest where it's like you have to sign up to work for, to take out almost like a commission for the Federation equivalent in New Atlantis. It's one of the side quests. I mean, there's so many side quests.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I never explored that one. I haven't explored that one yet, but it's still sitting in my queue. But it's very interesting how many different options, and you do have 3 factions, or you can be, 3 religious factions, or you can be agnostic. And each one has its own benefits and drawbacks. And this game feels like there's a lot to explore. You do, whether you do the side quests first and then you go back to the main game, or you plow through the main storyline and then go back for all the side quests when you're super powered. There's so much beyond the surface, or below the surface, that you could play it 8 hours a day, every day, and I think you could play it for so long, because of all these different planets. Like I said, I've only explored a few solar systems, and just going back to Mars and then seeing all these things you can do on Mars and look around and you scan and log and everything, and it's hella hefty. Yeah. It really is. You could tell that they've put so much work into the story on this, perhaps more so than I think Fallout or Skyrim.
Yeah.
So Marcus, what do you think of Paul's Firefly analogy? Like in my head, Firefly is very much a Western meets sci-fi kind of thing. We had one user here ask if it was more Dune instead of Star Wars. Is there any like Star Trek vibe to it? Anything you would equate it with?
Well, I did say, grubby Star Trek, and that's just more on the stylistic
Yeah.
version. I can see the Firefly aspect 100%, especially if you want to play as an independent, and not really align yourself to anybody else. You're playing as perhaps a bounty hunter or whatever. It just feels, I can't get away from this, how grimy it does feel. Even the New Atlantis, you got New Atlantis on the top where you got these three areas, and they're absolutely gorgeous and shiny, and they've got this huge CNN-esque type building and the coffee shops, and then there's a place called the Well, which is underneath New Atlantis, and that's the seamy underside. And you got Neon City, which is that's the more cyberpunky kind of area. And everywhere you go, there's just people who are going to talk to you, tell you their stories. Some of them will lead you to give you a quest right away, like, I want a sandwich, or, I want a hand shandy. Or, some will just tell you a fucking story, or you'll be standing somewhere and somebody will run up and say, aren't you so-and-so, so-and-so? I want you to do this, that, and the other, just like you do in real life. Just like, happens in real life. So the amount of writing and attention to detail that's gone into this game is mind-boggling.
Sounds impressive.
I don't think it's very Dune, though.
No? Okay.
Well, I mean, one of the things that to me is a big part of Dune is the fact that
sand.
Well, there's that.
But there's a lot of sand.
But there's
you
also
get a lot of sand in your vagina.
Right. But there's also, it's a lot about empires and not democratic governments, but like you have an emperor and they control things, and then they have these fiefdoms and whatnot. And you don't have that in this game. The entire galaxy isn't under the rule of a king, of a god king, or some kind of thing.
There's no Zendaya.
Yeah, well, no, there is no
Chalamet.
Zendaya. Although there is Wayun, which I was very excited about. So that but yeah, there's no kind of like kings, knights, or any of that kind of, and there's no politics in the sense of like you're not like there's no trade negotiations. You're not like
E.T.'s not up in a corner going.
At least I don't think so. I mean, I don't know.
And most importantly, there's no sting in a cod piece, is there?
No.
Hey, don't disk sting in a cod piece.
No, I'm not.
I mean, I think we need more sting in a cod piece.
Sting in a cod piece makes everything better, in my opinion. Now,
I think this is the sort of game that can be all things to everyone.
Okay. Now, a few minutes ago, Marcus said cyberpunky, which has inspired me. I want to make a character named Cyberpunky Brewster. Note to self, I will do that in the future. Now, how is that for a transition? Let's get to the part that people love when Marcus does this. Let's talk about the stuff you guys did not like about the game. A few things were touched on before, but let's get down and dirty with it. Marcus.
It's fucking fiddly when it wants to be.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
It's just, like I said, the button presses. I mean, Paul was saying, "Oh, you can do this, this, and this," and you're you're in orbit around another planet, and it's all hunky dory, happy joy. But it can be fiddly, especially when you've got to you get to like resource management, your inventory, weapon management, ammo is really tricky, and it's not super clear what type of ammo you need. I mean, thankfully, ammo doesn't have weight, which is good.
Yeah.
But there's still some of the some of the weapons are a bit shit, like the shotguns. The shotguns. These shotguns have a really good wallop, but of course the range is only 30 centimeters from the front of the gun. That's what it feels. Anyway, that's what it feels like.
Was it useful at all then? Since the range.
I haven't found the shotgun. I mean, I honestly found a really good pistol and a really good machine gun, and I used them faithfully. I managed to get my ballistics up, which was just made them exponentially better. They do have, like plain, rare, and epic level guns that do seem to drop, almost Borderlandy in that way. But almost too many of them can drop initially, and you don't know which ones to carry, which ones not to. And I don't know if I just hadn't unlocked the skill yet, but not being able to disassemble them for parts really irked me. I'm not sure, Paul, if that comes later.
That is my biggest pet peeve, is how inventory management seems actually dated compared to like other games.
Well, I mean, even Fallout. Just being able to strip down, find a workbench, and strip down everything, because with regards to the weapons and eventually ships, and eventually I will build a homestead. I don't want to build one right now because, as Paul said, you're on your ship, and I'd like to improve my ship or buy another ship. Great. But to be able to strip stuff down, because when you strip it down, it then starts to get way less, and you get junk. That to me is something that needs to be looked at, because it does make the whole system unwieldy.
Yeah,
you do have the option to obviously use your companion as a pack mule. Now, one of the tricks they're missing that I think from Mass Effect would have been great is that you don't get to equip your companions. You just give them stuff, but they have their set weapons, they have their set armor. You can't really spam them up to your needs. And it does seem to be, missing that level of, I remember in Fallout 4, it's like I could tell people to stay back or be defensive or be aggressive. I wasn't able to find that in Starfield. I don't know if you did, Paul.
No.
And I think that's definitely a missed opportunity, because you do find these people who are companions and crew members, and they have some really impressive skill sets or great weapons, or weapons that, you can upgrade. You should be able to upgrade for them and give to them, like a proper captain would. Make sure that their crew is outfitted. And I think that is something that is something that should be improved. In a future update. I mean, that's it. It's the clunkiness with regards to the menus and just being accessing stuff, and the companion and inventory issues really have been for me the biggest bugbears, because it can take an age or what feels like an age when you're in combat to try and negotiate X, Y, and Z, space combat in particular.
And what were your biggest pet peeves, Paul?
Well, like we said, inventory management is a real problem. The fact that you can't mark an item as junk and then easily sell it off when you get to a store. The fact that you can't break things down into like resource parts is a problem. You can't carry too much stuff at any given time. You can't store too much stuff on your ship. If you throw something on the floor in the main cabin of your ship and then you fly away, it disappears. One good thing, though, is when you get weighed down, unlike in Skyrim and Fallout, you don't suddenly find yourself moving at a crawl. You can still move at a regular speed. What it does is if you move at more than a jog, suddenly your oxygen level goes down. And that can hurt after a while. But you can always just kind of stop, catch your breath, and go somewhere else. I think what's also important in pointing out is, like we said, you're going to all these different planets. And what that means is you can't always fast travel to a store or back to town, because there may not be a town with a store on your planet. And finding stores can be a real problem, which is one of the other issues. One of the first stores that I found was on New Atlantis. I've never seen it again. I have no idea where it is. And part of the problem is when you're on a planet,
in the commercial district.
See, but there's nothing in the map that tells you where things are. And
the map is an issue. Yeah, I mean I think that's the other thing. The map, the maps are an issue with regards to whether they're up close and personal, like cities,
yeah,
or from space.
These both sound like really basic things that haven't been a problem with RPGs in a long
They've
time.
not been a problem
That's like the weird thing
Bethesda
about
games. I mean, it almost feels like they're determined to make such a change that some of the things that have become staples in Bethesda games of the past have been sort of like thrown by the wayside. There do seem to be a fair amount of terminals where you can sell your stuff. Normally, as you land and you're right there on a landing pad, and there is a terminal probably within 60 to 80 feet on most places, not everywhere, but where you can shift off your junk and you can sell from your cargo hold as well. But they give you such a paltry rate of return. And it can be annoying, as I said, if you have some weapons that, I really want that stock, or I really want that barrel. I want to disassemble that shit. I mean, I would love to be able to disassemble every, fancy weapon I find and have this huge armory in my ship where I can just go, all right, I'm going to take that barrel and that scope and do this and all that. And yes, I've made the best water pistol ever. But they do have the weapons benches, they do have the armor benches, they have the crafting tables for health stuff,
right?
But it's initially it's not closed off. You can access it, but you can do fuck all with it. It takes a long time before you can actually do anything because you have to get a whole bunch of supplies up and then, hopefully unlock stuff. But I mean, if in Fallout 4, if I disassembled a gun, the recipe for those particular components would then go into my inventory or whatever, and I know I'd be able to do it for the future. And that's missing this time, and it does seem to be a huge oversight because make no bones about it, inventory is a huge aspect of the game, especially if they want you to get enough materials for your ships, get enough materials to build your homesteads, and really sort of like design the game, design the experience that you want. Find your your little planet, build your thriving colony, kick everybody else off, however you want to do it. It does seem to be a massive oversight.
Building a spaceship is also, or rather, customizing your spaceship is also a real issue. Because like I've gone in and been like, okay, I'm gonna get a better shield and a better engine, and then I'm like, wait, did I do it? I have less money, but it told me that everything went into my cargo hold. Do I now have to go to a mechanic? It was all very confusing, and that's one of the things that like I kind of like. Okay, fine, I could just Google it in like a week, but still, there were times when I was like, wait, did I actually like fix my ship or not? I don't know.
Right. It sounds like it should be more intuitive. Now, the problems that you guys have mentioned, with inventory management, with mapping the spaceship stuff, are these things that you expect to be solved with patches and DLC, or are you not sure?
I would hope that they are. I mean, and this is a game where, as Paul said, in a week you'll be able to Google it because everybody and their dog will have a guide up. But this is a game that really did cry out for a manual. Because the tutorial system is for the birds. And again, I understand that the goal behind this game is to let you play the way you want to play. And I applaud that and I recommend it. Don't let anybody tell you how to play this game. If you want to do all the side quests, do the side quests. If you want to be evil bastard, be an evil bastard. If you want to do the main quest and then go back and do everything, do it. If you want to build, do everything to get your homestead up and running, and then just sit there whittling twigs and waiting for Ellie Mae to come out. You go do that because you can, and you don't have to worry about some tool who's 15 years old landing in a spaceship, calling you, an F word, and blowing up everything before he has to go to bed because he's got a calculus test in the morning. He's going to fail.
How about you, Paul? Do you think these are immediately addressable problems, maybe before the end of the year?
I think that some of them are, but some of them are not. One of my irritations was when you're on a planet and you want to go to wherever your objective is, you can use your scanner and your scanner will draw a line of arrows in the direction you're supposed to go. And the problem is that the line of arrows disappears after a while. It doesn't take you all the way where you want to go. And that's not something they're going to fix because that's literally how it works in like every other game. Like I've never played a game where it's like, show me the direction I'm supposed to go, and it draws the arrow and you keep going. So
I've never seen it lose the arrows. I've
it
never
does.
seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen it lose the arrows when I've been exploring. Because most of the time it's like, it's tapped into obviously whatever mission you're on, and it's invariably leading me back to my ship when all I want to do is
that's an Xbox thing. I don't know, but I know that like if I'm on a planet and I'm trying to get to the lodge and I hit the bring up my scanner, it'll go, okay, go that way, and then you go that way and you get 20 feet and you're like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to take you back to the ship.
I don't know. I don't think that the inventory. I don't know if they're going to fix the inventory management system. I mean, it's easy enough to like add something in where you can mark things for junk and
yeah.
I don't think, but I don't also think there's a lot of things where you can improve yourself in the custom. When you level up, and so I don't know that there's going to be an incentive for that. Although one thing that I really wish, because I think we haven't really talked about this, is the leveling up system is insane. Because as Marcus alluded to, there's 83 different things that you can level up. And every single one can be leveled up further. So as Marcus mentioned, you can level up your gun usage, and now you're doing 10% more damage. When you kill 20 people, it says, okay, now you can use another upgrade point and then do 20% damage. Okay, great. But there's no way you're going to be able to like significantly level up every like multiple skills. And I kind of really wish what they had done at the beginning is said, hey, here's the whole thing. You've got 20 points. Go nuts. And every time you level up, you're not just getting 1 point, you're getting 3 or 5 or more, so that you could actually make a significant dent. I mean, I understand the idea of not wanting you to like level all 83 up as much as they possibly can.
Of course, yeah. Then you have everything's overpowered and.
Yeah, but like I feel like by the time even playing this at Next Game Plus, I'm still not going to really even scratch the surface. Like because one of the things they do is you have to unlock a certain number in that first tier of the different sections to unlock the next tier and so on. And there's like, I think 4 or 5 tiers. I can't imagine ever playing this like new game plus, new game plus, new game plus, and getting to that final tier.
But somebody will.
I'm sure they will. Yeah, if you win a beeline for it, you would, but I don't think it's going to happen for me.
Yeah, if you played it for 12 hours a day, every day, 5 days a week, 6-7 days a week, whatever, for a while, I'm sure, apart from getting obese and, losing all muscle tone, you'd probably get it done. But again, I can see why they didn't do a lot of these things, because they didn't want this to be Fallout in space.
Gotcha.
But I think, much like when, we expect things of a Diablo game because it's coming from Blizzard, or we expect this much of a Borderlands game because it's coming from that team, or, a Call of Duty game because it's coming from Treyarch. They've perhaps gone a little too far away, because some of the things that actually just really elevated those previous games to, almost godhood are things that could have really taken this the extra mile here. But, again, you've got to respect Todd Howard's vision and the team's vision. And, we're not playing Fallout in space. Otherwise, that would be a different game. But, yes, I think, the idea, for example, I think there was a trait or a perk in Fallout where, you got an extra point for every level. Once you learn that, you really got to the things you wanted to focus on, whether it be lockpicking or persuasion or big guns or explosives or whatever it was, you got to do it, and you did it at a fair clip. And you really felt that difference. But this, because there's so much, I can be again, this kind of like, okay, where do I put these points? because I want to play this game this way, but I know I'm going to be missing out if I don't do, put this into lock picking and this into persuasion and this into that one. And I think there's a lot of aspects of the game that people are going to totally miss out on because they don't want to put money into fucking making food. And it kind of sucks that there are huge aspects that will probably go totally unplayed or unexplored.
Now, before I ask for what scores you guys want to give this game, let's start with a simple question. Is this a Game of the Year candidate for either of you? Paul?
Yes. Although I will say this, I don't ever actually determine a game of the year. To me, it's always the games of a year.
Okay. But it's one of the best things you played
this
year
year.
So
I would say it ranks for me alongside the remakes of Dead Space and Resident Evil, the Star Wars Jedi game, Diablo, and a couple other things as definitely
it's up
going
there.
on my list.
And for you, Marcus?
Definitely. It's one of the best games I've played this year. I mean, it's just unfortunate that it's come hot on the heels of Baldur's Gate, because Baldur's Gate now is just something that I'll revisit at some point whenever, because this is my cup of tea. I think, and I'll be honest with you, the other games that are the front runners for Game of the Year, there's Zelda and what's the other big one? That's Elden Ring. Is that the other one that came out this year?
That was last year.
That was last year, yeah.
Okay.
Well, Zelda is not in your wheelhouse at all.
No, Zelda's definitely not in my wheelhouse. But yeah, this is definitely a front runner for me, because it does tick all the boxes. And it's not a term. This is what puts it ahead of Baldur's Gate, for example, is the freedom that you get in this game is the freedom that I want in all my games. And Baldur's Gate with turn-based combat, and it's pre-made. The character presets that, yes, you can create your own, but all you're doing is taking up one of your group slots when you should perhaps be playing this character, who then has their story, and you get an extra character in to your group, and it just gets really old fast, and the dice rollings for the fucking birds, man. But I can appreciate Baldur's Gate. I can appreciate the standards, and I can appreciate the story and the love and respect that went into making that game. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's not perfect. No game is, but it's a fucking banger as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. Now, Paul,
for all the critiques we've just leveled at it, it's still an absolute banger.
Paul, since you're our guest today, I will let you make up the review scale out of, I don't know, pickle laser beams or whatever.
We have to go out of 10 because they we might get Bethesda putting us on Metacritic then.
Sure. Out of 10 what, Paul?
A warp scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, interesting.
If I can go, I was trying to think of Star Trek. I was going to go trebles, but I didn't think.
I was hoping someone would go trebles, but so it's a warp watch for you.
For me, it's a warp 9.
Ooh, Marcus.
A warp 9.5 for me. I admit I am. I like what Todd Howard shovels in my direction. He's one of the very few game designers that I've met that I was actually kind of starstruck when I met him. But I think, again, if this game had those tweaks and had the improvements that it needs, that I feel it needs for me, it would be a 10. It would be a perfect 10. But still, it's not far off. I mean, the things that we've brought up can be major issues, but they don't detract too much from the overall experience, because the overall experience, the sheer vastness of this game, is an incredible achievement. And yeah, I'm kind of in awe of it, to be honest with you.
So there you have it, folks. Starfield. Marcus gives it a 9.5. Paul gives it a 9. and it is a Game of the Year candidate for both of them. Next week, we will be returning to our regular time slot on Tuesday at 6. Marcus is traveling to Wales, where all of us will be wishing him and his family as much love as we can. Paul will be filling in as guest host, where we will be talking about whether or not the world needs a reboot of Highlander. Because as you know, there can be only one. Now, guys, say goodbye, and we are out of here.
Goodbye.